Hello. Last night I went to see Renfield at the theater. It had Nick Cage in it, and it looked like a campy vampire film. I love Nick Cage, and I love overdramatic nonsense, so I thought I'd better get tickets before they sold out. Just as a heads up, this film includes excessive gore that isn't realistic. It also features crass humor of the adult variety and a lot of cursing, like every third word or more. Renfield is a film about Dracula's henchman, a man named Robert Montague Renfield, a real estate agent that tried to sell Dracula a home sometime in the early 19th century and ended up becoming his familiar. After centuries of living as Dracula's servant, gathering innocents for his master to feed on and taking care of all of his daily needs, Renfield starts attending a self-help group for people in abusive relationships. It's there, listening to the stories of humans like himself, that he yearns for a life free of Dracula. As the title and premise suggest, Renfield is all about Dracula's assistant. We see the world from his perspective, and we follow him on his journey. Nicholas Hoult plays Renfield as a sad and pathetic man broken by the years of torment he suffered under Dracula's rule. He lies to himself about his role and seems like a lost puppy until he starts chowing down on some bugs, which is his version of super serum. After eating, we get the Captain America version of Renfield, where he runs around beating people up and killing them in the most excessive ways imaginable. Hoult does a few of the slow-mo scenes and pulls off some hilariously over-exaggerated poses. He also does well at being the comical straight man in the room. His innocence provides quite a few laughs. The story revolves around Renfield learning to stand up for himself and eventually standing up to Dracula. And while it does introduce two other mini storylines, they are purely there to serve as vehicles for the action that takes place later on. Both of the other storylines serve as background pieces to Renfield and are brought into the film through Renfield's actions. He kills a mob enforcer who was in the wrong place at the wrong time, which drags in the mob storyline. And the cop storyline comes in because he used his pen to kill the enforcer, which was from the bar he frequents. The main storyline has a lot of heart and touches on the topic of abusive relationships. It never goes too deep into them, but we do get some funny scenes of Hoult trying to explain his situation to the humans in his support group. It's also hilarious when Dracula actually shows up there. Dracula is an over-the-top, manipulative villain played by Nick Cage, and he does a fantastic job of hamming it up. His voice is super creepy. He takes his usual pitch variance and dials it up to 11, which creates this larger-than-life villain who seems like he's perpetually towing the line between being elated and a full psychotic break. His makeup is also fantastic. At first, he's this corpse that's actually falling apart, like his skin is peeling off of his bones. Then slowly, he starts to look more and more put together until finally he's Nick Cage with gray skin and sharp, narrow teeth like a barracuda. The two have these small clashes where Renfield makes strides until finally Dracula snaps and starts attacking Renfield for failing in his duties. That's when Renfield starts fighting back. There is supernatural action, lots of humor from the situation, and in the form of crass dialogue, and whenever Renfield and Dracula are together, we get amazing scenes of these two actors battling for the most presence. The one problem is that they never really explain how Dracula or Renfield's powers work, and it ends up creating some plot holes later in the film. It's easy enough to write off the inconsistencies because it's all fantasy anyway, but the film goes out of its way in the end to be inconsistent for the sake of emotion. They pull magic out of a hat and reverse serious events that happened earlier in the film on a whim. It's a fun story and it works out alright if you don't think about it too much, but it definitely has some serious plot holes in it. Outside of Hoult and Cage, the rest of the cast is serviceable. There are a few awkward performances and some emotions that feel wooden, but the film never focuses enough on the other characters for it to really affect the overall experience. Visually, the film is all over the place. The costumes and sets are incredibly well done, especially the makeup for Dracula and Renfield. The action scenes consist of two types of sequences: choppy, sped-up fights, and slow-mo CGI fests with over-the-top gore. The fighting itself is kind of hard to follow and doesn't have much impact, but when they choose to do gore instead, it actually works quite well as a slasher-style visual. It's so ridiculous looking that it becomes funny. Outside of action sequences, it's a simple drama with some colorful lighting. We get some decent energy in the camera and they capture the emotions well. Sound-wise, the film makes use of a plethora of genres and uses both original music and background instrumentals. The music does a good job of following the scenery and flow of emotions, and they're great at giving Dracula a menacing sound whenever he's around. He gets this classical horror vibe whenever he's on screen, and it works perfectly to make him feel like a villain out of time. The action sequences are backed by music that gets the blood pumping, and we even get a few little jokes from the music too. Like when the priest vampire hunter gets killed and the holy choir sings it out. Overall, Renfield is a campy horror action film that has a very specific adult audience in mind. Dracula is a true villain who relishes being evil, and Renfield is a solid character who goes through a fun journey of self-discovery. Watching the two of them clash is great. The visuals could have been better, but they do gore well and capture the drama aspects cleanly. The soundtrack is fun, varied, and well used. If you like campy, crass, slasher-style action films, then this one will probably entertain you. But for people who aren't, this will probably be a big no. 6 out of 10. And remember, these are just my thoughts on the film. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Bye-bye!